Hello, welcome to the middle of week four. This is uh, the day when your workshop copies are due for writing number two, and where you are supposed to start responding to other people's writing in workshop number two. I looked on it before I jumped on to do this mini lecture, and it looks like you guys are doing great already. Again, your participation is really wonderful. I really appreciate it. So keep on. If you haven't got that posted yet, please get it posted. If you haven't responded to another writer yet, please respond to another writer. Let's make this a great workshop. I'm going to say a couple of things about that workshop in just a few minutes. This isn't going to be a very long lecture, hopefully, although I can certainly start talking and forget to stop talking. I don't have a whole lot prepared in this lecture as far as subject matter with writing or protests to talk about. But I do want to mention a couple of things. The first is, this is a photo from the peace rally that occurred in Dearborn last week. It's a striking photo because of the mix of the races and the cultures and the genders and the belief systems and the politics that are going on here. I think it's an important photo. We haven't talked a whole lot in this class yet about protest itself. You've done some reading on it, some very good reading that is preparing you for it. And the reading that you have this week from Grace Lee Boggs is a really great reading for helping you think about what it means to be active in society. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be reading a book called The Algiers Motel Incident. It's a full book provided to you for free, generously given to us by the publisher of the book, Johns Hopkins University Press. It's already been posted on our webpage, so you can go there and look at it. It's a difficult book to read at times. It's got some striking, shocking acts of violence in it, and some topics that are difficult to deal with. So fair warning on that, but we're going to talk about it. And in using that book, the book is about something that actually happened during the Detroit uprisings in 1967. And using that book, we're going to be talking about protest and justice and social action and why these things matter. And one of the great things about this book is it really talks about issues of writing and representation and how and why we should write about things that happen in our society. So as we begin talking about that more, as I talk to you more, I'm going to focus on some of those issues in next week's lecture and the week after that. Let's go ahead and take a look at our Moodle page so I can tell you about a few issues going on here. So here's our Moodle page. Here's the second workshop. We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people that have posted, a few people that have already responded. I did want to mention something about your responses. I was reading through the responses from last week for writing number one, and they were all, nice. And I don't want you to be mean. I don't want you to be difficult. I don't want you to hurt people. And I don't want you to be critical just for the sake of being critical. But I want you to be critical in the way that critical thinking uses the word critical, not critical in the way that my mother uses the word critical. I want you to think clearly about what is being presented to you as a reader, and I want you to reflect on that in your responses. So I'm not seeing a lot of that in the workshop so far. What I'm seeing is two different things. One, great job, this is a really great paper, I really liked it when you said, or two, hey, this topic is really interesting to me, but I disagree with this point. Let me talk about this point about your topic. We are neither responding in this workshop so that we could talk about the topics, nor are we just giving each other pats on the back and saying, keep on going. What I really want you to do is to reflect on what it means for you as a reader to read this paper, to try to give the writer a sense of how you read it, what kinds of effects it had on you, and why it mattered or why it didn't. In order to do that, you've got to talk specifically about the things that the writer did or did not do to affect you as a reader. You've got to talk about how you interpreted things and why they worked that way. If you read a point and it has no evidence whatsoever, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say that was a great point when you said, because it wasn't. If there's no evidence, it's not a great point. I want you to be a bit more critical, again, critical in the critical thinking way, not in the critical in Mike's mother way. I want you to be a bit more critical when you're writing these responses, to talk about the things that matter with writing and reading in these pieces of paper, in these assignments for English 131. So please work on that a little bit as we do this workshop. The other thing I want to cover here is the writing number 3 assignment. I never actually read writing number 2 out loud to you, but it was a pretty straightforward assignment. This one's not so straightforward, so let's talk about this one. Your writing number 3 assignment is to create meaning alongside another's meaning. And I want to read this one out loud to you because it seems straightforward, but there's a little bit more going on here than what you might expect. Here's your assignment. Find an editorial written about a protest that occurred this year and write a response to that editorial. That's a pretty classic assignment that you might get in any writing or reading class, where you have to find something that was written and write a response. But this is not asking you to do a simple form of, I like this, I didn't like this, it was really interesting when he said this, and people have been writing about this topic all over. This is asking you to do something much more than that, which is to do an academic response that actually deals with issues and actually tries to establish and prove one of your own points through the act of doing this response. So here are your requirements. Your editorial must come from a professional newspaper or news site, likely from the opinion or editorial section. It must be an editorial, and it must be substantial enough to produce a meaningful response. So you can't just pick somebody's blog up. You can't just pick a letter from the editor. You can't pick a news story. It's got to be an editorial, and you need to know that it's an editorial. How do you know that? Well, you read it. You find out if this is a piece that's based more on argumentation and interpretation and opinion than it is about reporting cold, hard facts. And if it's doing that first one, then you've probably got an editorial. That's the first requirement. Second, your response must be at least 3 pages long. That is seems like a pretty normal kind of assignment thing, but it actually has some purpose here. That is, I don't want you just to write a really quick, thoughtless response. I want you to actually have to think through, what is it you're trying to write, and why are you writing that? What is your point? How are you going to establish it? How are you going to prove it? Your response must use careful summary, paraphrasing, and quotation as you write about the original editorial. This is basic academic skill stuff. You need to learn how to use sources, and so this assignment is asking you to practice doing summary, paraphrasing, and quotation as you write about the editorial. That means you actually got to use the editorial. You can't just say, I read this editorial, now let me tell you what I'm thinking. You've actually got to use the editorial in your writing. Number 4, your response must develop into an essay of its own. When a reader gets done with your essay, they must care more about what you said than what the original writer said. That doesn't mean necessarily that they have to agree with you or that they have to think that you're the most genius person ever, but your essay should draw their focus from this original piece that you're writing about to your point and your argument, and it should make them consider that. Number 5, your response should pay attention to what an audience needs in an essay. You should attempt to establish precise points, use solid evidence, develop meaningful explanation, all with clear writing and intentional organization. Basically, I'm asking you to do a good academic essay here, but I want you to do that rhetorically. Why do you write an introduction in this way? Why do you write your first supporting point or your conclusion in this way? You have to think about how you're developing your paper for a reader where you're establishing a meaningful argument. Number 6, your essay should show effort that is appropriate for a college writing course. Pretty standard stuff there. And number 7, you must include a works cited page in your final draft. This assignment might sound like a normal everyday writing assignment. Find something to read and respond to it using summary skills. And it's true, you've probably had many writing assignments like this over the years, and you'll probably have many more. But the requirements here are asking you for something a bit more. You cannot simply write a thoughtless response to a general reading. I've already talked about that a little bit. You must write a clear, specific argument that has been developed as an equal contribution to the discussion that your editorial began. This assignment is asking you to pay attention to the following skills in writing. I want to talk about the equal contribution before I go on to this. Somebody writes something, I write something, and then you respond. Barack Obama writes something, and you respond. Um, uh, David Brooks, a famous editorial columnist, writes something, and you respond. The whole idea of finding a text and writing a response is that your writing should stand on equal ground with the other person's writing. Now, let's be honest here. I've got a bit more experience writing than you do. And if you and I were to get into an intellectual argument using sources and critical thinking, I don't mean to be critical here, and please don't take this the wrong way, but I would probably destroy you because I've got a lot of experience in that area. And if David Brooks or Barack Obama and I were to get into a different argument, their ethos is such that they've got such a strong footprint or strong voice because of their ethos, I would probably get destroyed. There are just different levels of argumentation that happen here. When you write a response, you are trying to raise your argumentation to the same level as somebody else's argumentation so that they are both participating in the same conversation. So what skills do you use to do this? Analytical and critical reading. You have to read the original article and you have to read it deeply so that you understand it, but not just deeply, you have to read it critically. Again, critically in the critical thinking way, not in the Mike's mom is critical way. My mom's not really critical. She's a lovely person. Number two, using the source as a counterforce in your article, in your own essay. That is, it's not just something that you're responding to, but it is something that you are working up against to develop your own meaning. And it has to be strong within that, within your piece, but you have to be stronger. Developing a persuasive argument. You have to recognize that what you are establishing and what you're going to say here needs to persuade somebody else. And an essay that just tries to say, this was a really good article I read, you should read it too, that's not persuasive. Finding and establishing your voice. If you and I are writing contrary essays and you want to establish your voice against mine, you've really got to get a sense of who you are as a writer and how you want to write this. And then writing with meaning. And this is a really hard thing to do. It shouldn't be. Why else do we write except for with meaning? But all through high school and sometimes in college, you are told it doesn't really matter what you write. You just got to turn this thing in. I want you to write with meaning. I want you to say something that matters to you and to your readers. And that means finding something meaningful to say. You can't just write this, turn it in, and let somebody else tell you in workshop, great job, I really like that. I really want you to hopefully piss people off, or hopefully make people really change their mind, or hopefully make them think, oh, that's a really good argument. I hadn't thought about that, but I still disagree. My daughter and I've got a 10 and a 12-year-old boy, but I also have an adult daughter. And we were just sitting down yesterday talking about this whole J.K. Rowling debate that's going on, because J.K. Rowling has said some things that may be critical of transgender rights and transgendered people. And so she's come under a lot of criticism. And we were talking about this, and I'm 52 years old, my daughter's 30. And she was trying to convince me that maybe my views need to change a little bit. And she was right. Don't tell her that. But she was sort of right. And I don't have, please don't misunderstand me. I don't have judgmental or very terrible views on transgender issues. In fact, I teach about that stuff sometimes. But some of my language needs some work, or some of the ways that I make assumptions needs work. And my daughter was pointing these out to me. But in that conversation where my daughter, as an adult, who's 30 is talking to another adult who's also 50 and a college professor and a PhD, it's a it's a conversation where the power differential is a little bit different. And so we were having to practice really speaking at the same levels with the same kind of argumentation so that we could get somewhere with what we were talking about. That's what I want you doing in this writing number 3 assignment. I want you to really practice trying to say something with meaning to have an impact with what you have to say. In order to do that, you've got to be analytical and critical. You've got to use sources. You've got to develop a persuasive argument. You've got to find and establish your voice, and you've got to write with meaning. Okay, workshop dates June 8th, and the workshop will take place June 8th through July 12th. Our semester is bopping right along as we promised. It's a 7-week semester, so you're churning out a lot of quick reading and a lot of quick writing here. This should be a good assignment, and you should be able to get something meaningful out of it, but you got to put the effort into it. Okay. That's about all I want to talk about today, other than to say Grace Lee Boggs is a really important writer, really important thinker. She's a feminist, a philosopher, a social activist, and she did a lot to change the city of Detroit. You're reading one chapter out of her last book before she passed away, and it's a really good chapter to help you think about what it means to be active in society. Does it matter if you're active in society? Does it matter if you want to be active in society? Well, I'm not necessarily trying to persuade you that you need to go out and participate in this, or that you need to fight justice, or that you need to be anti-Trump. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. I may believe some of those things. I have my own values and my own ethics. I'm not trying to persuade you to accept mine. What I am trying to persuade you to do is to be thoughtful and engaged and to develop your voice so that whatever it is what you believe, however it is you decide to be involved in society, you can do so effectively and with power. That's where we're going. Doesn't matter if you march. I hope you care about these issues. I think caring about these issues is part of being a critical thinking adult, but ultimately that's not what matters to me. What matters to me is that you have the capabilities for caring about the issues that you think you need to care about, that you have the ability to develop a voice within those issues and to gain power through that voice. That's what matters. We're going to keep on working. I'll see you in workshop. And I look forward, I'm going to get ready to start your first papers. I look forward to seeing what you did there. Talk to you next week.